But anyways, enough about me. Great segment. Of course, we're going to be checking out our next guest. Joining us next is Ms. Clarissa Hawes, talking about a contractor. It looks like the USPS and one of their contractors having a little bit of trouble. Welcome, Clarissa.
Thanks for having me on today. Yes. So I was going through, I do my, monthly check of bankruptcy filings, and I came across this company, Ameritrans Express, and who had a mail contract. And then I started doing some more digging and found some social media groups that were saying that, they hadn't been paid in months from Ameritrans and were, trying every avenue to get paid. Some had not been paid for 4 months, and some, hadn't been paid for like 6 to 8 weeks, but they were continuing to do their routes because, they couldn't leave their customers without mail. So, I spoke with one gentleman. His name is Dustin Paxson, and who lives in Oregon, and he was funding his route, his fuel and all of his other expenses out of his own pocket to make sure that that the mail was delivered, and with the promise that he would be reimbursed for all of his mileage and overtime and other expenses. But then he was kind of ghosted by the company. And then, I wrote a story and he reached out because, he didn't realize that they had filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah. I mean, this puts in an interesting position, right? Because like how, as a contractor like that hasn't been paid, they're having to basically foot their own bills now. They're not getting paid. Like how do they keep driving? Like, how does that, I know you mentioned it kind of like they have this like duty to their customers, but you're also you're putting yourself at risk too, right? By risking not getting paid and basically running your own bank account down. I mean, were there contractors that were willing to kind of not drive until something was figured out?
And I talked to Dustin and his network of, drivers, and they all were willing, because sometimes there would be a payment here or a payment there that would keep them, when they said, hey, I can't keep doing this, then a payment would show up, and so then they'd be like, okay, maybe they're back on track. Maybe they've got things figured out. And so then they would drive for another 6 weeks and then it would have, like they wouldn't be paid again. So it just really was a different situation. And in Dustin's case, he claims, and the U.S. Postal Service did not have a comment about this, but he said he was able to bid on his route and that he was awarded it by the Postal Service. And so that he is now an independent contractor and is paid directly from the post office. So, checks are regular for him. But in the meantime, he lost out on, he maxed out all of his credit cards to make sure he had fuel and all of those things. And he's still trying to dig out from all of that, those expenses that he incurred. And then with the bankruptcy filing, according to their filing for Chapter 11, which they're seeking to reorganize, but still it's going to slow the process down of when or if he will be paid. And it sounds like that all unsecured creditors in the filing will be paid. But it's just a matter of when or if, kind of. And, they desperately need that money to keep going.
That's what I was curious about. Coming from my experience, over-the-road drivers, you give them a week I've never known in my experience with trucking that wasn't postal related where somebody would say, oh, I'm going to keep driving for you for a little bit. No, I don't get paid my 1 week. It's Dunskies. But USPS recently has been making more moves towards purchase transportations, towards contracting lanes in an attempt to save money. Do you feel like this example may be a potential huge risk factor? Because traditionally, you used to get a job at the post office, you do it for like 30 years. And if we have contractors now, there's risks of these guys going out and becoming bankrupt.
Yes, there has been a shift toward using contracts. And in this case, in doing some research, Ameritrans in the year that, that Dustin Paxton started working for them, they had $19.1 million, that they had, in revenue from the Postal Service. But they're claiming that money, that they received from the Postal Service wasn't forwarded on to the actual workers who were doing the jobs. And so, yeah, that is kind of the unknown, and ensuring that money that, the Postal Service forwards onto the company makes its way to the people that are actually doing the work.
Yeah. And I mean, as you alluded to kind of in the story, like one of these factoring companies, right, that basically provide the payment up front before they get paid by the customer, looking at it, they're owed like $3.2 million. They're going to be the ones that get paid first in this whole deal. I mean, at least from my experience, like when companies file for bankruptcy, those secured creditors are the ones that they're going to be the first ones to get their money back. I mean, in this instance, is this they tried to keep it afloat? Well, they use the factoring companies to try to pay the people, but $3.2 million, did that money end up back? I mean, it doesn't seem like it ended up going to what it needed to go to keep the drivers moving and paid. So, I mean, is there any indication of where maybe the money went?
Well, the factoring companies claim that they were not paid. Some of them have filed judgments against the factoring companies. So, it's unclear where that money went because, there's several judgments against them. So there definitely will be first in line for the receipt, because, with the agreements that they made for the receivables. Yes. So it's really an interesting story. No one from Ameritrans, their attorney won't, respond. It's really an unknown. But I did confirm that the Department of Labor and that in Oregon, their Bureau of Labor and Industries is that they have opened investigations. And I don't think the one agency knew what the other agency was doing. And so now I think they're going to, in speaking to them, that they're going to combine forces, not to duplicate work, to kind of seek, money for these drivers who, unselfishly, use their own money to make sure that people along their routes received their mail, which is an honorable thing to do, but it's put them definitely in a difficult financial spot.
Well, let's hope that they can get paid pretty soon. I guess the old joke is if you see a new boat in Chevy Chase, Maryland, you probably know it may have been from a factoring company. Clarissa, thank you so much for coming on. Hopefully the situation improves. We'll definitely be touching base with you again and try to get updates.
Okay. Thanks again for having me on today.
We're going to go to a quick break. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back with a carrier update.